like assistant Toastmaster. Yeah, Anand, we can start in next 1 minute.
Okay.
I guess Andeep's pic was taken by some event photographer. So they
No,
keep
it was a selfie taken by my friend.
Selfie cannot be taken by your friend. It was a click taken.
I mean, he took a selfie. So,
and Anudeep cut
delegated. Delegated selfie. Okay, guys, let's start. Anudip, you can go ahead.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. How many participants do we have? Let me just go on. Okay, quite a few. So 16. It's a less number, but okay. Good evening, everyone. So this is our third episode of Evaluation Bootcamp. Until now, we have talked about the speech, the breakup of the speeches and how we analyze a speech. We've gone through a couple of videos, and even last time we were given a speech by Jim Kay, which we were analyzing, and something that we'll continue today also. I won't take much time because most of the time we overshoot our time, so I won't be talking too much. I'll just give a few ground rules here. First one is to keep yourselves on mute so that there's background disturbance. So everyone can hear a few noise here and there. If you can put yourself on mute, that would be great. Otherwise, the moderator or I will do it. And this whole interaction, the whole session is usually an interactive session that many people ask questions. Chandramouli will ask questions and you'll respond and so on and so forth. So unmute yourself only when you have a question or if Chandramouli has asked something. Otherwise, mute is fine. Last time I remember we were analyzing Jim Kay's speech. We were breaking his speech. And that is something that we'll continue today also. So without any further ado, I will give back the screen to Chandramouli, who will take the session forward. Chandramouli.
Thank you very much, Anudeep. Can you also give me the screen sharing access?
Yes, sure, I'll do that.
So how are all of you doing today? It's been a while.
Yep, all good.
Good. We are excited that there's no lockdown tomorrow.
Why? Oh, okay. What is the plan for tomorrow then?
Probably go outdoors and maybe cycle and get some fresh air. Kind of thing.
Nice.
By the Chandramouli, I've given you the access.
Yeah. I'm just sharing. Yeah, I hope now it's visible as a PPT, presentation, right?
Yes.
In the presentation mode.
Yep. Yes.
Okay. So this is what we are planning to do today. What we did last week, I think this is where I wanted to start, right? Most of us observe and we end up thinking the observation is analysis and we build evaluation from there, right? But that is not enough. It's more like what we observe is just the tip of the iceberg, right? And we need to construct the entire iceberg before we can kind of evaluate it. This was a mistake I used to do when I started out. It took a long time for me to understand this, so I thought it would be good to initiate people on this, to open your eyes to this aspect, so that when you go ahead, you don't make the assumption that what you see is analysis. No, it's not, right? What you see, what you hear are all the symptoms, right? As a doctor, as an evaluator doctor, you have to understand the root cause on the basis of the symptom, and that is your analysis, right? So if you remember, let me quickly go back. Yeah. So you remember this, right? I hope all of you remember this. Yes? No? Maybe?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yes. So this is a good place to start. So Now this is the inverse of speech construction, right? So let me, why am I not able to go back? Yeah, okay. So this is what we saw then, right? That there is an intent, which is the purpose. Then there is the content, which is the opening body conclusion, the points that is being said, the title of the speech, the transition, the pause. And then there is a delivery, the mode in which the message or whatever is the content is conveyed across with words, body language, and vocal variety. So in this, what are the things that we observe? We observe the content, we observe the delivery, right? Sometimes the speaker might explicitly state the purpose, sometimes it is not explicit as well. So it may or may not be observed. So far, are you in line with me? Yes, no,
Yes.
maybe?
Yes.
Perfect. So how do you take something and do an analysis? Any of you have ever done a root cause analysis? You know what a root cause analysis is?
Yes.
Who's that? Who said yes?
Bandana.
Okay, hi Vandana. So what is a root cause analysis? Can you?
Whenever we get a defect or a code bug in our released version, released product, we go back and check that why this defect came, and what could be the solution which might have been incorporated in the early stages of the problem, so that this could not have been reported back as an issue to us.
Perfect. And what is a technique that you use to do root cause analysis?
Um,
Or
from
how? Yeah.
from the logs only, we check that what went wrong. Like I'll tell in 5G way, the way we work in Nokia, that we look for,
5G.
yeah. So I'm working on 5G. So that is how we look in the log, that whether cell was set up or not, and if the configurations were fine, then what went wrong.
Perfect. There is a technique specifically used in root cause analysis. So I thought it's important for us to kind of understand how do you dig deeper. The technique is called as 5Y analysis. So any of you have heard of 5Y analysis? Probably you would have done it already, right? So
Yes.
what 5Y means is when you ask why for the first time, you get a very straightforward answer, which might seem to satisfy the question why. But if you ask it as a layered 5 why question, so first you ask a why, you get a reason. Then you ask why that is the reason, you'll get another answer. You keep drilling down with whys. When you do 5 times, you would probably have reached the core root cause, right? And that is analysis, right? And that is why I wanted to pick on the root cause analysis because a stated purpose and sometimes the most apparent purpose is definitely not the purpose of the speech, right? It is a lot deeper than that. So you might have to think, so this is how the speech was constructed and is delivered to you. You might have to go back to the thought process of the speaker, and that is the purpose of the analysis, right? Why the speaker would have said this? What was the speaker thinking? What would have affected the speaker to say that this is to have told this story? Because more often than not, as an evaluator, we might end up giving a very shallow feedback, like probably you could have used a personal story, probably you could have done this, right? Without understanding whether what the speaker told has impacted the speaker or not. Agree? The speaker shared probably because that created an impact on the speaker. What might have not happened is probably the impact has not been carried to the audience, right? The question should be why on that versus asking the speaker to change the story, right? So that is what I mean by the 5 why analysis, which is required, starting with. So more often than not, what you observe is the content and the you might notice the words being used, the language play which is being used, the body language, and the vocal variety, right? You do notice it, right? Sometimes if it is fantastic and it's doing its purpose, right? The words are doing the purpose, the body language is doing its purpose, the vocal variety is doing its purpose, you might not notice it, right? That's a fantastic speech where you do not notice the words being used, the body language, and the vocal variety. Hope that made sense because it's a very important statement. If you don't notice it, it is considered to be a great body language, great vocal variety, and great words. First off, do you agree on that or you do not agree on that?
Sometimes we get lost in the speech and we forget to mention dimensions of the speech. And
Fantastic. So what are the words supposed to do? They are supposed to deliver they are just messengers, right? So let me put it this way. Words are messengers, body language is the messenger, and the vocal variety is a messenger. When a delivery person comes and delivers you something, is your focus on the package which got delivered or the person who delivered? Package, right? And that is the purpose of the messenger, right? And that is what the words, the body language, and vocal variety is supposed to do. It's never supposed to overpower. So its intent is not to overpower, right? There is another parallel thought process that when something seems the best of the people, if you observe the world champions, right, you can notice that their body language is good, but their words were good and their vocal variety is good. But when they give the speech, you get lost in the speech that you might not immediately remember, okay, this word was being said and this was the body language until unless you sit to dissect the speech and analyze it. All right. You might remember everything after the speech, but when the speech is going on, it is not like, okay, the body language, oh yeah, he's doing this act on stage. That won't be the case, right? It will be the part of the speech, right? So that is the purpose of these things. More often than not, see, there is also one aspect that we need to understand, that we learn from our seniors, right? Fortunately or unfortunately, in India, we are more dramatic. In the sense, we feel that drama is the way you're supposed to speak on stage, right? You have to say, I ran on stage, or that is not that it is our nature when we talk with our friends, right? I don't think any of us would say, hey, when I went to the movie, I ran, right? That's not the way we normally talk. Would you agree with me on that?
yeah.
But when we go on stage, we tend to do that, right? Because we are told that that's the way to be for you to speak, right? And probably that is because an evaluator would have told that, right? That is not necessarily the case. So I want you to understand that the delivery mode is supposed to do its job, right? The words are supposed to do its job. What are words supposed to do? If you remember, so have any of you done CC4? Any of you from the CC era, competent communication era, and have done CC4?
Yep. That's the one I find the toughest in the entire manual.
Right. Because what are words supposed to do in a speech, right? So first, let us understand what are words supposed to do, what is body language supposed to do, and what is vocal variety supposed to do. We touched upon it a little bit last time, right? What are words supposed to do? What do you do with words? I'm sorry? Someone said something. Yeah?
String them into a sentence.
Yeah, I agree, but I mean, what are so when you say sentences, so I'm talking about the language aspect, right? Which means the word. Word is
basically to create an impact.
How? So each of them, words do not create impact, right? It is the content which create impact. So you have a message that creates the impact. Word delivers them, which means what are you supposed to do with words? What can you do with words?
Express.
Express what? Yeah, perfect. You express, right? So all of these are expressions. Your body language also expresses, your vocal variety also expresses. What do you normally express with words?
Emotions and ideas.
Ideas.
Okay, you do express ideas with words. Fantastic. Emotion at times, right? If you think for yourself, do you express your emotions with words or the lack of it at times, right? Now, looking at a speech, how do you normally use words? Imagine
Yeah.
you're telling a story, right? How would you use words?
Okay. I'm Namrata. Can I talk?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah. So, Molly, I'm a bit confused because I really believe that one is like, what is your main intent? What is your main intention? Your objective?
I'm not able to hear you because your voice is breaking.
Yeah, Namrata, we are not able to hear you properly.
So that is what I think words are. They help you.
I'm very, very sorry. We started to hear you just now. So can you repeat what you said?
Okay. So what I said is that words kind of help you frame the sentences, and each of the words which you use, if you use them judiciously, if you use them cleverly, you can actually communicate the objective of what you are saying. So each and every word which you say actually makes up the content and helps you to convey what you say.
Perfect. So more often than not, we use it for ideas, and ideas are connected with words, and that is how you use word. Fantastic. That is one use of word, right? But word use does not end there, right? So words are something with which you linger the senses. If I have to tell a story and correct me if I'm wrong, there are certain words which have impact on us, which makes us do things, right? If I were to start a speech with the statement imagine, and whatever I say after that, you are already with me and you're imagining things with me. A single word imagine can do that, right? And more often than not, you set the scene with words, right? And that is what is the purpose of narration in a movie, right? Where you set the scene, you set up things with words, right? And that is where words are more important. You agree? So you won't be able to set up a scene with your body language or set up a scene with your vocal variety, but you'll be able to set up a scene with words. How? You would say, for example, going back to the speech of Craig Valentine, he's in his speech, he quotes, I'm quoting him. So he says, but if you were there in that room after 5 minutes, you would have seen that my wife and we were seated in a black leather couch with the smell of freshly brewed coffee in the air and crunchy hot popcorn in our hands. Regular soap running on TV. And that was when she turned to me and looked into me with her deep brown eyes, right? So first thing what he did was suggest that you are in that room and looking, right? If you were in that room in the next 5 minutes. So like subconsciously, he puts you there in that room. And then he describes the room to you, right? He creates the setting. What does he do with the words there? He's not narrating, but he's making you a part of the experience, right? You can't do that. So what he did would have been complemented by his body language and vocal variety, but the main aspect there was the words, right? So what we do with words is we create a picture, right? You kind of um, create a scene. You create the, what do you say, a setup for what is to happen. Agreed? So that is a place where words play a very important role. Other than, of course, a lot of ideas, a lot of statistics, you can show them with a prop or something which becomes a part of the visuals, right? But more often than not, you say them. For example, showing them wouldn't create as much as impact as saying that. There is this TED talk by Jamie Oliver. I'm sure some of you might know who Jamie Oliver is. He's a very famous chef slash cook from Britain. And in his TED talk, he starts the talk by saying that in the next 19 minutes, when I'll be delivering this speech, there'll be 4 Americans who will die because of the food that they eat. Right? What was startling about that fact is that he is not talking about a third world country where people will die because of the food that they eat, but about America, right? And he does not put some statistic like 1,000 people would die over a period of 1 year, but he said in the next 19 minutes, as in when you're listening to the speech, there are 4 people who will die, right? So he creates impact with words, putting the same statistics, right? So these are the places where you use words to the best. Agreed?
Yes. Also, Chandramouli, just something I wanted to add.
Yeah.
I also, sometimes we use words to explain an action or explain something which you cannot show on stage.
Perfect. Like what?
Like if I have to do a speech about cricket and I have to kind of describe how Virat Kohli or Vivian Richards bludgeoned the ball to the boundary or dominated the bowlers, right? It's then very difficult to show that in body language.
Perfect, perfect. So that is where you use certain words which create that imagination, right? So, or it immediately takes you to a stadium, right? You set the scene. That is what I meant by setting a scene. So maybe you're talking about cricket or maybe you're talking about something. So there are certain things which words do the best, right? And then there are certain things which body language does the best. Can you tell me what are the things that body language or a visual does the best?
Like if somebody were to say, I was terrified, right?
Right.
If I just say terrified,
Yeah.
versus the body shrinks and then you can show that expression on your face, that would have a better impact rather than just saying terrified.
Fantastic point. Why is that? Can you tell me why is that the case?
I think because when an audience looks at an individual's body language, I think they tend to also experience the same emotion that person is going through.
But when I say run, why don't they experience the run? Right? That is also with body language, right? So you are on the right track, but I want to implore more so that you understand why.
Sure.
Right? You're on the right track, but I want you to think further. Don't feel that just because you express it with body language, the audience will be able to see. You need to understand what aspect expressed would go better with and what would not, right?
Along the same lines, okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. You can go ahead. Yes, please.
Yeah. So along the same lines, like how the previous person spoke, more for the eyes, because the eyes show most of the actions or most of the emotions that come out.
Right. Agreed.
For you to deliver.
Perfect. So there are few aspects in here which we need to understand, right? Let me walk them one after the other. First one is
okay. Chandramouli, can I just add to just one small thing? Can I just add to what you said?
Please.
So that was a very interesting question. So I think that like you gave a very nice example of running, right? Because running is a simple action which you can actually play on the person's mind, or you can play the visual movie just by using the word run, right?
Precisely.
but there are certain emotions which are subconsciously felt in a person. Okay, like for example, fear. Okay, now if we have a hair standing up on its ends, okay, we are not able to talk anything. Okay, so I feel that all those words and expressions which are not consciously manifested in terms of something, but they can only be known to a third person when they look at you. For example, if I'm disgusted,
Wow.
okay, I'm not
Fantastic.
for example, if I'm disgusted, I might not say anything. Okay, I might not even say, but probably if I taste like a bad piece of chicken, or if I just taste some disgusting food, my expression will
Ew.
say it all.
Yeah,
Even though I don't, so I feel all involuntary actions which are not
absolutely.
directly manifested in some kind of action or a word are best conveyed by body language.
Perfect. You got the right string there. See, by nature, we do use words in certain places. By nature, we use body language in certain places. By nature, we use our vocal variety in some places. I want you to be conscious as a person overall to understand, what do you do more with your body language? What do you use gestures for? uh, Possibly when you're talking on a telephone conversation, because when you're even at home talking with people, uh, you might be conscious of how you use your gestures, right? But when you're in a telephone conversation, though you know the other person is not listening, not seeing you, you'll be like, you are there, right? From there you take a left and you come here, then you go this way. So subconsciously you'll be using your hands for gesture, right? And there are certain things which we naturally tend to do that comes a lot with culture, a lot with the way we have been expressing ourselves from our childhood, right? You do see the two ends of people. Some of them, when they are angry, they might shout at the top of the voice, and the others who just go really low and say, I'm extremely angry, I don't wish to talk, right? uh, there are people who, I mean, you would still feel that they are angry, right? It's not that they have to shout at the top of the voice always to express that they are angry. Why is that the case? Because it seems natural, right? Because it seems that it is the nature of the person to express that way, right? Our mind is fantastic in picking these subtle signs. It's called as, when it comes to facial expression, it's called as micro expressions. Someone who has watched the series Lie to Me would be able to relate to this. Any of you have seen that series? There's a series called as Lie to Me, in which they talk about micro expressions, right? And it happens to us all the times. You might put up a great actor on stage, masks their expressions, they make their expressions, but still there are micro expressions which they cannot fake, right? Um, our body, our mind picks up these micro expressions as well. So when we talk of words, body language, and vocal variety, each of them, it varies from person to person, culture to culture, but each of them have a purpose for an individual person. For example, someone might express about themselves, say a given speech, if given content, if it is given to, say, Kaushal, he might do it in a certain way versus if I give it to Suraj, right? Because each person is unique. Agreed? And each of them have a different way of putting together this content, right? Some might be fantastic at doing it with their body language. Some might use their vocal variety for it. What I said till now, that you use words to set it up, you use body language for this, you use vocal variety for this, is more or less 60% of the cases, but there are always exceptions, right? And that's why I said, when someone does it so well, right, use the words, body language, and vocal variety so well, in unity with themselves, you would find that things are not out of place, so you cannot notice them. Though they do their job, you won't notice them. It's like the statement that, I mean, it's a cliche statement that a good manager seems to free, as though they are doing nothing, right? And the best in each of the field, when they do it, it doesn't seem to be done with a lot of effort. Agreed? And when you see someone do it effortlessly, you feel that they are an expert in that field, right? And when do you see the effort? When things seem to be out of place, right? For example, if someone was to practice that when I say the statement, there are 400 people, right? And they practice 400 people, 400 people, 400 people every time. And so when they go on stage, it is not natural, right? So if you notice, if I were to do 400 people, sometimes, because two of these are happening from different part of the brain, right? I've told myself, when I make the statement 400 people, I need to do this. So this is a separate action which is controlled by brain, and saying 400 people. So if the timing is misaligned, the audience would be able to notice that I moved the hand to say 400, which means it was not involuntary. It was kind of made. The hand gesture was created and it was made, right? So it slightly appears out of place, that we observe it. We feel that, oh yeah, there is something that happened in there, right? If it was natural, so right now, till now, I've been moving my hands, right, while I'm talking, but it was not with a conscious effort, so you wouldn't have noticed much of it. Agreed? In the sense, it wouldn't register in your mind. But if I were to say 400, right, this and 400, you're like, okay, that is something which is not natural. You will notice it.
Can everyone just go on mute? I'm sorry to interrupt here. Can everyone else except Chandramouli can go on mute? We can hear some kitchen utensils. Not sure if coming. Yeah, thank
Yeah, so far so clear. Am I making sense so far?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, great. So vocal variety, more often than not, plays its strength. I wouldn't say that that's the only place where you use it. Vocal variety is used for your emotions, right? So if you look at it, you always tend to, you can figure out what is, even if the same words are spoken with the same body language, it's the voice which gives whether the person is sad or angry. It might be said with the same words, with the same body language, but voice gives it away the best. Voice and the eyes, they give away the real emotion, right? So all of these give a clue of what is the intention, right? So I want you to familiarize and not have a misnomer that, okay, you have to use a stage like this. Okay, you have to use your voice like this. Okay, you have to always use triads and dyads, and you have to use always metaphor and simile. A speech does not need anything. It only needs, depending upon what is the purpose of the speech, all these are supposed to do is deliver, right? And you need to clearly understand these. When we talk of delivery, so when you look at an evaluation sheet, not evaluation sheet, I mean a judging sheet, it talks of, there is one big column called as delivery, in which you'll see the body language, vocal variety, and the words being used, right? So these are considered to be the delivery aspects of the speech, and they are there for a purpose, right? And they shouldn't become the purpose, right? So you don't have to create a speech so that you split the stage into three. Okay, you don't have to construct your events around creating that on stage. No. You have a story to tell. Now you have to think, okay, if the story has to be brought out the best. For example, if you have to go from point A to point B, there are 5-6 different ways in which you can go. What is the best way? There will always be a best way, right? The best way is not uniform, in the sense what is the best way for me might not be the best way for Kaushal or for Sumitra, right? Each person, it would be different. And as an evaluator, never confuse and think that the speaker has to do it the way you do, right? Hope that made sense so far.
Yes, but I have a question here.
Yes.
Yeah, so we understand that there are some speakers who have much more, I mean, they have better command on their delivery than the way they construct the content. And there are some who are the other way around. So now if a speaker decides to use his strength and works majorly on his delivery and tries to bring out that message by delivery, what as an on the evaluation perspective we can give a comment on that.
Perfect. So let us, yeah, so that is where I'm coming to. So the whole point is you always infer the why. So you notice all these things and you question yourself. Say, for example, having said that your body language should not stand out, there are places where you make body language which does not seem to be natural, okay, to create a possible thing. Let me give an example, okay. This is a scene where someone is kidnapping another person, right? And there is a lady who is in the, so a lady who is walking, there is a Maruti van which comes by, and there is a guy who comes outside, pulls the lady inside the Maruti van and puts a knife to her neck, right? And she shouts, "Help me." And the guy says, "Shut up or I'll kill you." Right? This is not natural, but the idea is to create a comic effect, right? So when you talk about entertaining speeches and humorous speeches, a lot of these rules might be broken with the idea of creating that impact of humor, because we laugh when something unexpected happens, right? So you might over exaggerate when it comes to humor with the intent of creating that, right? There are places where you use body language to create humor. If you think of the most famous comics, they either use words for humor, or their voice, their vocal variety to create humor, or their body language to create humor, right? Even the great humorous speakers that we have in our district, they might use one of these to create humor, right? So coming back to your point, sometimes people might wantedly do something which is not natural for them, right? It might stand out a bit. If it does and you notice it, you question why. Why was the speaker trying to make this particular body movement or the voice stand out in that instance? Was it intended, or was it involuntary? Probably they practiced, they tried to do something and it did not work, right? Did that answer your question, Kaushal? Yeah. So everything needs to be tied down to the intent behind the speech, right? So now let us use the speech that we heard last time. So all of you remember the Jim Key speech? I hope all of you have taken note of it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. So let us go one after the other and look at the various aspects of that speech. Right? So let us first look at the title, right? And let us try to connect to the purpose. What was the title of the speech?
No doubt.
No doubt. Perfect. And what is the connect? What is the intent of the speech? Let us go. So always first identify the intent of the speech. What was
Inspiring.
the? I'm sorry?
Inspiring.
No, yeah, that is the purpose. But the intent, so inspire you with what?
To show our feelings.
I'm sorry?
To show our feelings.
Perfect. So it is important for everyone to show how they feel about someone, because uh, more often than not, like even if you, so someone shared the speech of, I think Vandana shared the speech of Daddy, Where is Mom, right? Who was the
Yeah,
speaker?
Samuel Wankhede.
Samuel Wankhede, right?
Yeah.
So even if you look at it, what are they trying to say in that speech? That we don't express our feelings enough, right? Especially when it comes to men, it is quite possible that it is considered to be kind of not very good if a dad expresses their love for their son or vice versa, all right? It is somehow, I mean, it doesn't happen in a lot of places. They tend to be more strict if it is a son. It's somehow the culture or whatever it might be, right? So his speech was about that. Again, the same general purpose as Jim Key's speech, right? What is the purpose? That sometimes you might feel that it's awkward and it's not natural to express your feelings to someone, because that's not how we naturally are built, right? There is an hesitation. How would the world conceive? What would happen if I tell that? Would that person feel awkward, right? Especially when it comes to close one, like within our family, we might not do it, right? We might go and propose a girl or a guy. That is different. That is not the only thing that I'm talking about, right? But more often than not, we don't express how we truly feel about our near and dear ones, because we are afraid to. So when you express how you feel, you put yourself into a vulnerable place, right? Then you don't know if the other person would feel the same or they would make fun of it. A lot of things can happen, especially when you go and tell your dad I love you. He might be like, aaj kya hua tujhe, right? So you might be worried of all those things. So there is an inhibition in us, and that is why you need a motivation. And both Samuel's speech and the speech, the purpose was the same, right? The purpose is that all of us have inhibition to express how we truly feel about someone, right? What is the downside? So that's the intent, right? But what Jim Key did in his speeches, he qualifies. And Jim Key is if you watch his speeches, you'll understand he always qualifies an aspect, right? So it is this seems one level, right? So the first level is that you are saying that, okay, our intentions we need to express. He asked the question why, right? He does not. So it's like you have to follow your dreams, but why? So he asked the question why to this particular statement, right? Why you have to express? Because sometimes if you don't express, you leave a room for doubt in the other person's mind, right? Especially now in the current time. This was in 2001, and then itself all this started, that uh, uh, we don't distance ourselves socially, but mentally we distance ourselves. We are closer with people on social media. In person, we are distancing ourselves, right? And it's a clear changeover from before 2000, before 1990, I would say, to now, right? We have around 1,000 friends online to 2,000 to 3,000 friends online, but we are not friendly with the people who are there in our house. We don't talk to them more. Agreed? So this changeover happened, and in the year 2000, it was important, right? What used to happen, and it still continues to happen, that the number of suicides soar because people feel that they are not loved, right? And they might be son of someone, they might be daughter of someone. Why do they do that? Because in social media they express, someone has expressed hatred towards them, right? And they feel, or in school someone bullied them, right? So they come home and they feel that their parents don't care, and they don't know where to go. And that's why it is important. And that's why on that year, that message had an impact, right? It is also the situation, right? And that was the intent behind that speech, right? And you have to decode it this way. And this is only possible if you ask, okay, why was this chosen? What could have affected this speaker so much, right? It could be some incident that could have affected, right? They might their daughter, he had a daughter who's a very young one. She might have felt left alone at times, and she might have been like, okay, my dad does not love me, right? Then he would be like, okay, I care for her more than anything else, but why did she get confused? Probably because I left a room for doubt in there. So there should be no doubt, right? So if you try to fill in, maybe this is not the purpose, but if you think about it, it could be, right? So it gives you a sense of where the speaker is coming from. Agreed?
Yep. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So when you understand that this is the intended purpose, right? And this is what they wanted to create. This is the reason for existence of the speech. Because there was something which impacted the speaker. And if we try to put it in so many words and kind of fill in for the speaker, you realize that it's potentially something which is very, very impactful, right? I believe each of the speech has a potential. Every speech that is being given has the potential which is of this order, right? It is just that you need to think for the speaker and feel for the speaker of what would have been the intent behind the speech being given. What could have, see, someone decides to spend 7 minutes or so much of a time with so many audience to give a speech, which means it has somehow impacted them. And they feel that it is important to share, right? Now you need to understand why could this have impacted them. You try to understand the real intent behind the speech. Sometimes the speaker might be unaware of the intent. They might know what is written as the purpose of the speech, but it is for you to look past it and look at the intent behind the existence of the speech. What could have triggered the speaker to give the speech? Right? If you ask that question, why did the speaker choose this topic? Rather than question, oh, this is not a good topic to speak upon, right? You might have chosen something better. Have we given that as an evaluation ever before? I have done that. But once I realized it happened to me, right? That someone told me, why did you choose this? You could have chosen something more impactful, no? I was like, but how do you know that this is not impactful? Because it impacted me. Then I realized, wait a minute, it's possible that it impacted me, but I was not earnestly able to carry that impact to the audience. So that is where the missing link is, right? So someone superficially thinks that, okay, I didn't choose the right topic, probably did not realize that this is probably something which is impactful to me. They didn't give that chance or that benefit of doubt to me and think, okay, why could this have been impactful to him? And then start to fill in the gaps. And I think as a good evaluator, we are supposed to go that deep, right? To understand the real intent behind the speech. Possibly build a backstory, right? Why could this be chosen by the speaker? Okay. And look at that intent and then look at what is being stated as a purpose, right? And then you start to compare what you observe, the opening, body, conclusion, and see if it is weighing in. So let me go into the next slide, which is talking about the approach. So we spoke a lot on finding the purpose, right? And once you find the purpose, you start to think for the speaker and start to fill in the blanks. And these two are the things that we discussed so far, right? And this is where most of the analysis goes. And once you hit to this level that you understand, okay, this is why the speech exists, right? And then you start to take everything in the speech, the body language, the words that are used, the voice, the points that are stated, the arguments that are presented, the stories which are given, and you start to weigh it against this purpose. Is it adding to it or is it taking away from it, right? And that is what is analysis. And also ask yourself, okay, I know that this is not strong. So for you, say for example, one story is weak. You figured out this is the purpose and that story did not meet that. So don't dismiss and say, you know what, this is weak, you know what, this is strong. You are allowed to do it if you're a judge. If you're an evaluator, you need to ask, okay, so what would be the intent behind the speaker choosing this? How could this be impactful in any possible way? Probably the speaker chose the right thing, but could not express it the right way, right? So those are the things that you need to fill in, and ask yourself, with everything that you think is incorrect, ask for, as in on behalf of the speaker, why the speaker would have made this choice. They made the choice, right? So obviously they thought of something and made the choice. So think for them and think what could be that aspect, right? So if you expand in this way, you would be able to understand the psyche behind the speech, right? The thought process behind the speech and the speaker. I think that is crucial in order to be empathetic and evaluate the speaker, right? Agreed?
Agreed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Chandramouli, just a question or a thought. So
Yeah.
when we are evaluating speeches, and then this is going back to your earlier point, slightly.
Right.
And then we often tend to say, if I were to express this, or when you're telling somebody that they could have done, they could have used, there was scope for voice modulation, there was scope for body language.
You never should say that in your life. There's a scope for body language, there's a scope for voice modulation.
Got it. Yes, that was
because
the point
that is too generic, right? I mean, see, when you say, for example, have you ever been in a place where you were, you would have done a self-appraisal and your manager would have given you an appraisal, right? Has that ever happened to you?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So if your manager comes to you and says there is a scope for innovation,
right?
How does it feel to you?
Irritating.
So here's the point, right? So I completely get your perspective, where somebody tells me there's scope for innovation. I would like to understand what they mean when they say that with an example.
Exactly. So rather it should say, imagine someone as a manager comes and tells you, hey, there is a scope for innovation, right? This year you did not do anything with respect to innovation, right? Then you fail in your mind, but you know what? I did so much of things, and that is what I've put up there. Where did this innovation come from, right? You agree? This would be your thought process, right?
Correct. Yes.
But imagine if the manager has to say this, hey, I see that you've done a lot this year. You've achieved a lot, and all these have been really impactful for us as a business. But don't you want to do something for yourself? Don't you want to be better year on year? See, right now this year you lifted the donkey load for the company, and it's not that it's not appreciated, right? The company grew, but you are still the donkey who carried the load, right? It's not the fault of yours. But how can you, if you are looking at growing to the next level in next few years, right? How do you groom yourself to it? You already need to start thinking like the next level. And how do you do that? When you do things on a daily basis, you don't wait for someone else to come and tell you this could be done better. Can you look for opportunities to do what you're doing in a better way? Can you think, because you are doing it, right? You are the best person to know a better way to do it. Rather than just executing on a daily basis, can you spend some time to question yourself, what did I do today? Can it be done better? And if you find a solution, if you find that something could be done better, can you passionately persist and work on it? I would want you to at least take up 3-4 things this year and do this. This is a more meaningful input a manager can give versus saying you didn't do something innovative this year, right?
Got it. I see your point.
Right.
Sometimes, but the conflict I have when giving an evaluation is when saying all of these to a speaker. There are times when I feel that I'm probably telling them how I would have done something in their speech, which might not be how they're going to do it. But the intent is to help them improve their body language or explain or use voice modulation, use whatever is needed to make that story impactful.
Agreed.
What would your guidance be on how do we refine in what we say to that individual?
Okay, so that is when it comes to presenting, right? So let us go one step at a time. Definitely, this is a very important point to cover. We'll cover that when we go into presenting the evaluation, right? Now, with respect to analysis, right? So you're able to analyze. So your analysis should not be shallow, and it should not say, okay, the body language was not used right. What do you mean by not used right? Not used right? What do you mean by that? So let me ask one question further. Imagine a speech where it have said, okay, you can work on your vocal variety. What aspect of it? Why did you feel that vocal variety requires some kind of working upon?
As an example, there could be, like we mentioned earlier, right? Every story has characters, then there's conflict, and then there's conclusion. Correct. So if somebody has all of those, but all of those are presented in a very flat tone, then there was scope to use tonal variety when
why should there be a tone? So now I'm asking you, right? Ask the question further. This is a fantastic point. Ask yourself why there should be a tonal variety.
To create drama.
Why there should be drama?
To if I'm presenting a story, there's a high point and a low point. Now,
why there should be a high? So you are telling what should be there, right? I'm asking you, why should it be there? So if something has to be there, there needs to be a purpose, right? Its purpose is not just because it's prescribed that every story should have a. See, let me tell you, every story should have a character, conflict, and a climax. Let me ask the why for why there needs to be characters, not a character. There need to be characters. Why there should be a characters? Why there should be a conflict? Why there should be a climax? Let me try and explain each one of them so that you will think in the same direction, right? So what is the intention behind having a story? It is trying to convey a point, right? If I have to convey a point, so you would have seen movies in which they talk about truth triumphs, Satyameva Jayate, right? When I have to tell a story that Satyameva Jayate, right? Truth alone triumphs. Obviously, there needs to be characters. Any guesses on who can be? If I have to have two characters, what are the two characters going to be?
Hero and the villain. Hero and the villain.
Yeah, so the two characters, one would be absolutely truthful and the other one would be in the opposite end of the spectrum, absolutely a liar, right? Because my purpose of the story is to tell that truth alone triumphs, right? And there would be characters because this is my whole conflict, right? So my conflict is around truth or lie, which is a better choice. If I have to tell a story around it, I need to have a spectrum of people, probably characters. One would be truth absolutely truthful, the other one would be absolutely a liar, and there will be a plethora of characters in between, or I can choose to just have these two, right? Minimum requirement is these two, right? Because only if I have these two and I put them in a situation, you will be able to see how each of them, and I characterize them, and I put them in a situation which demands them to exhibit these characters that they have, right? Because of that situation, you will see a conflict arise, right? And when that conflict arises, it will escalate because these two are in the opposite end of the spectrum, right? That is the nature, and that is the way it would go. And when you have this escalate to a greater level, and then you end it in a climax in favor of either one of them, in this case, because I want to say Satyameva Jayate as my point, I would probably tend to favor the one who's truthful in my story, right? Now, why did the story require characters? It's very clear. Why there had to be a conflict? It is very clear. Why there had to be a climax? It is very clear, right? It is not because the story needs to have characters, need to have conflict, need to have climax. It is not. So you can have a. My question is: can there be a story without a conflict? Can there be a story without characters? Can there be a story without a climax? Is it possible? Not possible. Probably it is possible to not have one of these and still have a story, but it might not achieve the purpose that we intend to achieve, right? Our purpose is to tell that or prove the point that truth alone triumphs, right? To achieve that purpose, you need to have all these three. Agreed? So I'm asking you, when you say that, okay, you need to have a drama, why there should be a drama? What is the drama trying to do in the point that you're trying to say, in the purpose that you're trying to achieve?
To get the audience to also feel the same emotions.
Fantastic. Now you touch upon the right thing, right? So why do you need a drama? Why do you need characters, and why do you need vocal variety? Is because, see, you are not telling the story to them. You're making them experience and be a part of the experience, right? And if you want them to be a part of the experience, that means they should feel that they are with you and experiencing that particular incident that happened to you. And for that to happen, it needs to be a first person narration, right? It can't be a third person, a narrator telling, okay, on that given day I went to the office. That doesn't create that impact, right? So that is the purpose of that. You got it bang on there, right? So how do you tell this? So now you understood what was the problem there. So it is not that drama is needed. It is not necessary for it to be drama. It is necessary for the audience to be a part of the experience, because that is what the speaker intended to achieve, to make the audience a part of the experience, so that in the end, when the speaker tells the point, it hits them, or what do you say, pulls the right chord for them the way it did for the speaker, right? And you would have felt that probably that did not happen to you, and then you kind of thought, okay, why would that be the case? Probably I didn't feel that I was part of the experience. But why did I not feel it to be a part of the experience? Probably it felt more like a narration than an experiential telling for me. Agreed? So this is what runs in your mind.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So you need to go to this level to understand. I feel that the voice is flat. But why do I feel that the voice is flat? Say, for example, it's a very sad scene. I have seen a speech, as I narrated before, called as, what was it? Remorse, right? Which was performed by one of the best actors in the Netherlands, right? And the entire speech was in a monotone, right? And no eye contact, looking at the floor, because it was remorse, right? He's talking about the biggest regret of his life. Imagine you are the person talking about the biggest regret of your life. You won't be jumping around the stage using you won't be doing all those things, right? You'll probably be afraid to look at another person when you confess something which is so bad, right? And you would feel really weak because you're in the most vulnerable place. So it sounded very natural, and we felt that we were a part of the experience. Because it was monotone, and because it was done with shaking of the head, because he was slouched, because he was looking at the floor, just in a blank space staring at it, right? And he was talking to no one. It was more like running the thought within himself. And that is how we more often than not feel remorse about something, right? Because that is natural, and that will connect to us because we have felt that somehow, and that is how we would react when we feel that. Right? It seems natural. It seems the way things would happen, right? Hope that made sense. That was Suraj, right?
Yes, yes, yeah, that definitely makes sense. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions? Or now all of you understand how to do an observation and how to take an observation to evaluation, an analysis. Hope that is clear.
Yeah. So just sorry for interrupting you. So shall we continue for 20 more minutes before we jump into the Q&A? Because we
Yeah.
have completed 1 hour. Yeah. So we
So,
can continue.
yeah, I have completed the content that I had, the pointers that I wanted to do on moving from observation to analysis. If someone wishes to understand further, if it was not clear or if you have queries on this, please do feel free to shoot.
So I had this question that while going through the Samuel's speech of Daddy's West mom,
Right.
I came across a point where he used some words which were not exactly a and he said something like acts to introduce.
I'm sorry, your voice is not very clear. Probably you might wish to repeat that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Am I audible?
Yeah, now it is. Now you're audible.
Yeah, so in Samuel's speech, there was one word like absolutely, which was modified to something else. And that word even doesn't exist in English dictionary.
What was that word?
Some absolutely, he made it to acts to incredulous, something he made it.
Oh,
So that,
absolutely. He made it as absa incredulously. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So is it okay to modify the words just to rhyme around in the speech?
See, let me ask you this, right? Any of you watched How I Met Your Mother?
No.
Okay, that's a very, I mean,
Yes.
yeah. So, so there is a simple word called as legendary, right? There is one character in that called as Barney Stinson, and I love that character, right? And what he does is he makes it as legend, wait for it, dairy, right? There is no word like that. But the impact that he wanted to create with that, most people who have watched the series would remember that aspect of it, right? So the words are there with a purpose. You are not there as a grammar Nazi, right? You are not going to go there and say, okay, this doesn't exist in the dictionary, this exists in the dictionary. But you look at why did absa incredulously, or why would someone absolutely, why would they make it as absa incredulously or absolutely, whatever, right? I'm not good at putting words together, but why would they make it like that? So absolutely means definitely, right?
Yes.
If I want to tell something is more definite than definite, So that might have been the intention behind the speaker using such a word.
Yeah, that's very close to some of the words that have been coined in the TV channels now in the reality shows like fantabogrously magical, something like that. I heard.
Exactly. But they don't
Yeah.
just say it, right? Because how many of you know C.K. Chendil Kumar?
Yes.
So Chendil Kumar, when he, I think in 2004, he came to Bombay to give a session for us. And I was very lucky that he was there to give us a session. That was the first time I got some knowledge in Toastmasters, right? So in his session, he spoke of the urge for people to use great and what do you say, big and flowery words, which you're used to writing essays, specifically if you're applying for colleges, right? So he used to have that urge to write probably, and he narrated an incident where he went and gave a speech when he was in college, and his friend, after listening to the speech, said, "You were fantastic on stage. What a great speech, but I couldn't understand a word of it." Right? It was almost like giving him a slap. Right? So that is where, so you are not there on stage to showcase your wizardry over the language, right? That you're great with words. That's not the intent. You are there on stage to convey a message, to reach out, to do the purpose that you set out to reach, right? And your words are supposed to aid you in that purpose, right? Sometimes you might modify words, like in this case. I'm just thinking probably why that speaker would have done it, to create a specific impact. For example, how can I say certain more than the word absolutely? Because everybody would have heard absolutely, right?
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yeah, I got the point.
Right. So I don't know if you've seen that there is this movie called as In the Pursuit of Happiness.
Yeah. Yeah, we have seen that. Yeah.
You've seen it, right? So in that, in the end, when he's truly happy, right? The entire movie is the pursuit of happiness, right?
True.
And it is not just the title, and it has a happy with a Y spelled incorrectly. Uh, uh, and in the end, the way he introduces that happiness part is that this small little, and he runs out of the office in joy, and he says, and this small little part of my life is what I call as happiness, right? When he says the word happiness, you something happens to you, right? And that is that word play, right? Sometimes you might use the word as is to create the impact, but sometimes you might need to modify it to create the impact. And why he says that in a simple way, because I go with Bawarchi, the movie, if you have seen. It is very simple to be happy, yet it's very difficult to be simple. Right? Because you find happiness in simplicity, right? And that is natural to us. What do we find happiness in? If you think about it, a smell of coffee, a smell of tea, a smell of something which is fantastic, a nostalgic memory, something which is very simple and pure is what more often than not brings us happiness, right? But certainty is a lot more complex, because the feeling is a lot more complex and it's very difficult to explain. You need to use words for that, right? So you look at what you're trying to convey and you look at what is the best way to convey it. Hope that answers your question, Bandana.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And please don't call me as sir.
Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah.
I have one question. Usually, what happens is the people who doesn't have a good vocabulary, so they tend to speak give their speech with simple words. So usually, couple of them have given a feedback that your speech didn't have very fancy words. Your speech was quite simple. So sometimes I don't understand whether it's good to you have a simple words in your speech, or we should use some good words in it. So,
Okay. So again, remember CK's incident, right? So the point of the speech is not to use flowery words.
yeah. But then let's
So
say,
let me ask you this, right? If I want you to think of the songs which have impacted you the most in your life, songs,
yeah,
okay, immaterial of the language.
yes,
So why did they impact you?
because their rhythm was quite good. Means I didn't have to understand actually what they were speaking, but then they hooked me with their rhythm.
Okay, which means you have not listened to sad songs ever. They are all happy, peppy numbers. You don't care what the words are, right? But
Okay.
there are people who listen to sad songs, ghazals,
Yes. Yep.
and they are the most. So some people consider them to be the most impactful. And if you go and break down the most impactful songs, impactful poems, right? So people always quote "The Road Less Traveled," all these great poems which were there, right? And if you go to those poems and see, they don't have complicated words.
Hmm.
They have words in the right places, but they are not complicated. It is the simplicity which carries the power, right? Complex words are required for people who can't use the simple words right. Sometimes they are required, but it's because of the person's inability to express it in simpler words.
Okay. So I was coming.
So
Like,
if
let's
the
say,
evaluator or someone gives that as a point, say thank you very much for your suggestion, and go home and think, why did they feel that the words were simple, right?
hmm,
Because so if someone found the words to be simple, they are just so um, you need to think. If you assume, okay, let us ignore someone telling that as a comment, that is an easy way out, right?
yeah,
But someone told that as a comment because they felt, why didn't they tell that for other speakers? Because if you look at the world's champions, they use simple words, they don't use complicated words,
hmm,
right? But why did they specifically choose you and tell you?
yep,
Because something in your speech triggered to them that probably you did not use the right word in the right place,
okay,
right? Probably.
hmm,
I'm just thinking for the person who might have said it. Probably
okay,
they might have felt it is a misplaced word, right? So when you misplace a word and they're not able to pin, they're like, there is something which is wrong here. What is wrong? People might not sit and think on it for a long time. More often than not, they'll come and say what is obvious first. They might
yes,
obviously come and say, oh yeah, you can use better words, right? But you ask yourself, what is a better word in that place? What did my word not do in there? If you ask this question, probably you'll get the right answer.
okay,
You're thinking beyond what that person gave you as a feedback,
yes,
right? And that is what I would want you to do as an evaluator. Think beyond what you would normally give as a feedback, right? Go deeper. Think, why did I feel this? Why do I feel that the words are simple? Why did I feel that the body language was not sufficient? What went wrong? Uh, Probably try to construct it from there. Let me come back to that example, which I hope all of you remember. There was one question which Kaushal asked last time, that there was a laugh in that particular speech. Not a laugh, kind of there was a place where he felt that he slipped a bit, right?
During
While
transition from swimming to
those,
Yeah, the swimming and coming out of that swimming, right?
yeah.
No, it was not the swimming part. It was
it
the
was about expressing doubt about the same expression two different ways, but there it was not required. Where he slipped the emotions, right?
so it was
About the eyes, scary eyes.
yeah,
She was
it was
scared.
about the I love you, you love me song, right? That was the
Just
part that you were talking about. I forgot which aspect, but I remembered that scene. I'm not able to place where it came, but I remembered what happened there. Probably it is at the swimming pool or at the I Love You song, the Barney song. One of those places before he cracks a joke, right? So it's a sad scene. He turns it around and he cracks a joke about it, right? And he laughs with it. So in his mind, he knows what is to come next is a joke, right? So he starts to grin a little bit. But the mood which he portrayed at that point is that the girl is sad or is scared, right? The natural reaction for a parent when their kid, whom they love a lot, is scared or sad is not to have a grin. That was a misplaced grin there, right? If you go back and see the part which you mentioned, you'll understand that. Because he as a speaker knew what is to come next. So he know that from this point on, it's going to be a joke, right? He reacted as an audience in the first place for the joke, which seemed misplaced. Right? So it was not appropriate to grin there, but this is what might have happened. So guessing on what might have happened there. And that's why you felt that it was not natural. There was something wrong about it. You couldn't put your finger to what was wrong there. I'm guessing probably it is this. Right? You can probably for the next week, you can go back and take a look at it and tell what exact moment we can discuss that. If I remember, this was the case, but I don't remember the speech now to tell you what aspect was it.
I think it was when the child was saying that, Daddy, I'm scared. And the person had to reply back. Jim Key has to reply back on that.
Okay.
So maybe Kaushal can say more.
Yeah, no, he might also not remember. If he had remembered, he would have said it now. That's why I said go and watch it.
I exactly don't remember exactly the, but yeah, I can remember that clip of emotion then.
Actually, it was about big brown eyes.
Expressing again. Yeah, big brown eyes. Actually, it was big brown eyes.
The second time it was not required to be sad, but it was sad.
Yes, absolutely. About the big brown eyes when he was mentioned.
Correct. When
about his daughter.
So
about his daughter.
He is supposed to be scared, and he went on to explain that her big brown eyes. And that point in time, big brown eyes seemed to be misplaced because his emotions did not seem true or genuine, because he had a smirk on his face. Because he know what is to follow next is a joke. We as an audience don't know. Right? So sometimes it can happen as a speaker. You are not living that instance because you're worried more about delivering what is to come next. But as an audience, you read it. So I want you to go back and look at that scene. Look at look at why he would have wanted to lay it out that way, right? Whatever he said. The big brown eyes, the words are very meaningful because it is a natural, when you want to understand the fear of a child or a sadness of a child, you will always understand that by looking into the eyes, right? That's the nature. When you want to look at whether someone is scared, you look into their eyes. When someone is sad, you look into their eyes. So he says that big brown eyes because he wants to indirectly say that he stared into her eyes. And he wants you to kind of imagine that quivering eyes, which is sad or scared.
Actually, there was a conflict over there. So after he expressed the sadness, then immediately he starts he happily asked me to sing a song along with Brownie song.
Correct. That is the second.
That was
one.
a conflict.
Yeah. So after that he sings. So I want you people to sing with me, and he laughs and he sings it, and then he jumps and he says, "Yep, I love the song." Right. So that's a happy part. So he mentally made a transition before in his mind, and he kind of has he smiles a little from being sad. He goes a little bit with a smile. I can't do it the way he does, because it was natural for him, because he recollected what is to happen next, and he kind of had a smile on his face, because that situation, it was not natural, and what he is trying to deliver, the intent, content, and his gestures were not in line, right? You find that there is something odd. More often than not, you don't find someone to be earnest, because what they are trying to say, what their actions, their words, and their thought are not in line, right? There is no integrity between them. In this case, that was the case because it was rehearsed, and he kind of was looking at what is to come. Probably he jumped ahead while the audience are still here, right?
Yes, I think we have reached 5 o'clock now. So anybody have any other questions? Okay, then let me thank Chandramouli for this wonderful session again.
Thank you.
Educating us and enlightening us with so much of insight. And of course, to all of you without whom it would not have been possible. Thank you so much for joining us again in the third session, and we'll be waiting for you in an excited manner for the next session.
So, what should we do as a homework for session 4?
Okay. So I would want you to take a look at the same speech. Let us take the same Jim Key speech, right?
Okay.
I would want you to. So we did observation, right? And there is something called as. Thank you for bringing this point. I think there is something called as the analysis of an argument, or so try to understand what was the intended purpose. So I kind of stated it. Probably you might agree or disagree. That is my take on the intended purpose, right? So write down what is the intended purpose of the speaker for that speech, right? Why would that speaker have chosen that as a topic? And then start to look at weigh everything against that, the opening, the body language, everything that you can observe, weigh it on that and say whether it helped or it did not help. Tell what are the things which definitely helped the most, what are the things which did not help the most, and try to question deeper and ask, why did this help and why did that not help? Right? For example, let us go and look at, say, what was the thought process behind using the first incident of the hospital?
Shock the audience.
Okay, with what?
He wanted to bring out that no doubt. He wanted to shock the audience into the kind of to really push them back and to really enforce that no doubt into their minds.
Perfect. So so the intention was not to shock the audience, right? So the intention is that, see, what is he trying to say? Let us look at the purpose of a speech, right? So if the purpose of the speech is to tell that you should express your feelings to your loved ones, and there should be no doubt in their mind about how you feel about them, right? If he has to say that, more often than not, what we might react, we might say, oh yeah, what's the point, they already know, right? This would be a reaction. Do you agree? Do you agree to that chain of thought?
Yeah.
Right, that would be a normal reaction of a person, is that yeah, they already know. Why should I go and tell my mother that I love her? Why should I go and tell my dad that I love him? Right? Because they already know. Don't they know that? Haven't I shown it enough? But then when he puts it in place, right, he talks about a place where, shouldn't the surgeon already know where he is operating? But then she marks and say here, and she asks, should I put no on the other hand just in case? Right? Now that creates a doubt in his mind. See, the intention is very, very clear, right? That this hand is shaven, the notes say it, everything says it. But there is a possibility that the surgeon might misunderstand. Right? Do you agree to this possibility?
Yep.
Because we have heard of incidents where the surgeon operated the wrong hand. But when we feel, when it comes to our well-being and health, we don't want to have any doubt about it. So he wants no to be written everywhere, right? So we understand that a little bit of OCD kicks in as soon as someone say that, what if the surgeon does not operates the wrong hand, just in case, right? So when that OCD kicks in, you feel that, oh no, there should be no room for error. There should be no doubt. If that is the reaction that you have for such a thing as surgery, because it's concerning your well-being, when it comes to the way others feel about you and the way you feel about others, do you still want to leave a room for doubt, right? So he transitions from a place where there should be absolute certainty to a place where we leave room for doubt. So he draws a parallel, right? And that is why he had that story, and that was the intention behind it, right? It was not to shock the audience. The intention is to take a place where we want to be absolutely certain and create a possibility of doubt in there, and then say, okay, here you can't tolerate doubt, but then why do you tolerate doubt in this place, right? He turns it around to you, say that, you know what, here you don't tolerate doubt, right? You want absolutely. So when you're supposed to get salary on the last Friday of the month, do you check your mobile phone for that message every hour?
Sometimes.
Okay. And it doesn't come on the last Friday. It doesn't come on the day when it is supposed to come. What would you do?
We become impatient and then we check here, there's space.
You call the HR. You're like, I didn't get my salary yet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can relate to this, right? And you understand the impatience there because you have been impatient there. Now I'll ask you, if that is the case, then why can't you understand that your parents would wait for your call every weekend and you don't call them? Now you understand the impact that that statement had on you.
Yep.
So that is exactly what he tried to do. He tried to take a place where you are in the receiving end and you become impatient, right? And turn it around and say, you create that impatient with someone, and you ask, no, why, Mom? I mean, one Sunday, one Saturday I'm out. Why are you making a big fuss if I don't call? Don't we say that? But now when you are in the receiving end and you kind of empathize with them because you are kind of traveling in the same shoe, then you realize, oh yeah, this might be the reason why. So to create that impact, first incident was created, right? So I want you to analyze this way. What did that particular incident try to do? Why was it in place? How did it try to, so how did the story construct together? How are each of the pieces connected? Right? And I want you to think that way. And that is analysis. Right? So probably as a homework, we talked a lot of theory of understanding the intent behind the speaker and looking at each of the things that you observed, the stories which were the points which were said, the opening body conclusion, the body language, the vocal variety, everything, and then connecting it to the purpose and seeing why they would have used it. This was an example that I did with why that particular story might have been used. Right? So I would want you to take this as a homework, do this analysis for the entire speech.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you so much for this. Any other point, Chandramouli, you would like to make here, or?
No, I think, I mean, I might be missing on things, but only when I get questions, I remember, oh yeah, we can touch this aspect, right? Because we are dealing with 1 hour a week, so.
Fine then, thank you everyone. Thanks a lot, and we'll meet again next Saturday, same time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Zoom link.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.